In Kenya, every household has tea every morning, and tea must have milk.
Africa isn't announcing its digital future with noise. It's building it quietly, piece by piece, far from the spotlight. And if you weren't paying attention to what happened in Conakry this year, you might have missed the exact moment the continent shifted direction. For 3 days, heads of state, ministers, innovators, and technologists gathered not to repeat familiar speeches, but to shape a new reality. The message that echoed through every room, every panel, and every private conversation was surprisingly simple. By 2030, Africa intends to function as a single digital market, not as an idea, not as a distant ambition, but as a working system already taking shape. What made this summit different wasn't the scale of the event, it was the seriousness in the room. People spoke like they had deadlines, not dreams. Project leaders described phases of integration. Policymakers outlined active construction work, not theoretical frameworks. And Smart Africa, the institution behind this continental digital transformation, didn't behave like a think tank. It acted like a coordinating agency overseeing multiple construction sites across 54 countries. For years, Africa has held conferences on digital transformation, but the 7th Transform Africa Summit felt less like a meeting and more like an engineering workshop. Ministries talked less about concepts and more about deployment. Developers spoke less about potential and more about prototypes. The continent sounded like it had finally crossed from contemplation into execution. Conakry was the first Francophone West African city to host this summit, and that mattered. It proved that the initiative wasn't being driven by one region or a few digitally advanced countries. It was becoming continental. Representatives from East, West, Central, Southern, and North Africa were sitting under the same roof, discussing digital identity, cross-border payments, unified data systems, and AI governance with one shared vocabulary. For the first time in decades, Africa's digital strategy felt synchronized. What stood out wasn't optimism, it was maturity. Africa no longer sees digital development as a luxury or a modern upgrade. It sees it as essential infrastructure, as necessary as electricity, water, or roads. No one wasted time explaining why digital integration matters. Everyone already understood. The question that dominated the conversations was simple: how fast can it be done? Projects were no longer presented as possibilities, they were presented as active blueprints. Sonia, the platform linking entrepreneurs with investors, wasn't framed as a dream. It was described as a tool Africa needs immediately. The SADX system connecting Rwanda, Ghana, and Benin wasn't introduced as an experiment. It was presented as a model ready for expansion. Digital ID wasn't spoken about as something coming soon. It was positioned as the foundation being laid brick by brick. By the time the summit closed, the message was impossible to ignore. Africa is preparing to operate as a unified digital organism. But that raises a deeper question. Where is this new confidence coming from? The answer lies in something Africa hasn't experienced in years: alignment. Quiet, steady, technical alignment. The kind that doesn't make headlines but changes everything. For decades, African countries have worked on digital projects independently. Rwanda developed digital ID. Kenya advanced fintech. Ghana built interoperability frameworks. Nigeria invested in startups. South Africa developed cybersecurity systems. These were powerful efforts, but they moved like separate rivers flowing in different directions. Smart Africa managed to redirect those rivers toward a shared ocean. 10 years ago, it was mostly a platform for discussion. Today, it functions like an institution coordinating continental infrastructure. When a country signs on, it isn't signing up for debate. It's committing to alignment. In Conakry, that alignment felt deeper than ever. Partnerships were discussed without promotional language. Leaders spoke like collaborators in a long-term project. The Youth Connect Alliance wasn't introduced as a youth program. It was described as a talent pipeline for Africa's digital economy. The collaboration with Visa wasn't advertised as a big corporate breakthrough. It was a building block in a continental payment system. The data exchange project linking Rwanda, Benin, and Ghana wasn't treated as a pilot. It was the first stone in a continental identity architecture. Africa is developing confidence rooted not in slogans but in structure. Another notable shift was how leaders spoke about digital sovereignty. A few years ago, the idea sounded ambitious. Today in Conakry, it sounded practical. African governments are beginning to understand that relying on external digital systems, cloud servers, identity platforms, data centers, payment rails, creates vulnerabilities. Data stored offshore, identity systems controlled elsewhere, digital rules shaped by foreign interests. These weaknesses are now seen as risks that must be fixed urgently. Cybersecurity moved from the margins of policy to the center. Digital skills programs are being harmonized, not duplicated. And for the first time, Africa began openly discussing internet governance on its own terms, rather than accepting rules crafted thousands of miles away. The biggest shift, however, may be psychological. African leaders no longer speak like they are trying to catch up to the rest of the world. They speak as if they are designing a path uniquely suited to Africa's needs, population, economy, and rhythm. That clarity brings confidence, quiet confidence, the kind that makes progress feel inevitable. But what does this alignment mean for ordinary Africans? The heart of the single digital market is simple: reduce friction. For decades, Africa's biggest digital challenge wasn't lack of talent. It was the endless obstacles. A business working in one country gets stuck across a border. A mobile wallet accepted at home becomes useless next door. Long lines for services, repeated identity verification, endless bureaucracy. The single digital market aims to remove these burdens, quietly, consistently, practically. Digital identity is a perfect example. Today, crossing borders often means proving who you are over and over again. A unified digital identity means recognition everywhere, instantly and securely. Payments are another struggle. Sending money across borders or buying services in another African country feels unnecessarily hard. A unified payment system removes that barrier. A phone number becomes a wallet becomes continental. For small businesses, the impact is transformative. A seller in Lusaka should be able to reach customers in Johannesburg without rebuilding their entire business model. A designer in Accra shouldn't need 10 different platforms to serve buyers in neighboring countries. Once digital borders fall, the idea of exporting across Africa becomes normal. Access to services expands too. If Rwanda builds an exceptional digital public service, why shouldn't Guinea benefit from it through interoperable platforms? Why should talent and opportunity be limited by colonial-era borders? The biggest change, though, is the mindset shift. When systems work smoothly, people think bigger, plan further, and move with more confidence. That cultural shift is what truly transforms economies. But as Africa strengthens itself internally, something predictable happens. The world begins to react. Foreign governments, corporations, and institutions are paying close attention, not because Africa is seeking validation, but because the balance of digital power is shifting. For years, Africa depended heavily on foreign-built systems. Now, as countries harmonize identity, data exchange, and payments, global players feel the change. Some see opportunity. A stable, standardized African market means clearer rules and better business prospects. Others, however, are uneasy. A continent that controls its own digital ecosystem is harder to influence, less dependent, less negotiable. Africa's fragmentation once allowed foreign actors to operate country by country, shaping policies through bilateral deals. A unified digital structure changes that instantly. It compresses negotiation space. It strengthens Africa's leverage. It shifts the center of gravity. As Africa integrates further, global companies suddenly use new language, collaboration, co-creation, mutual development. International conferences that once ignored Africa now feature it prominently. None of this is accidental. The world knows what a unified digital Africa represents. The largest young population on Earth, a billion-person market forming, and a continent no longer shaped by external donors, but by its own priorities. If Africa continues at this pace, the continent in 2030 will look nothing like today. Not perfect, not uniform, but coherent. A unified identity system means simpler movement and faster services. Entrepreneurs will design for the whole continent, not just local markets. Payments will feel natural across borders. Policymaking will become shared. Digital skills will be taught for continental opportunities. Talent will move digitally, not just physically. And perhaps the greatest shift of all will be confidence. Africa seeing itself as a functioning whole, not fragmented parts. When Africa finally activates its single digital market, the moment won't be loud. There won't be fireworks. It will feel like a quiet turning point, one the world only fully understands in hindsight. Africa won't speak as 54 digital fragments anymore. It will speak as one digital power, with leverage, clarity, and structure. The real question isn't whether the world is ready for a digitally unified Africa, it's whether Africa is ready to embrace the power it is building.